Well, there's a website that is useful for people who are looking to buy a house, and this website is equally useless for those who waste their time browsing through really expensive houses that they know they'll never be able to afford. It's called Realtor.com. Any of you ever go on that? Some of you have used that. Realtor.com, if you type in the location of pretty much anywhere in the U.S., I don't know about Canada, but anywhere in the U.S., you can find a listing of all the homes for sale, and there are lots of pictures on there for most every property, and you can see lots of interior photos and lots of exterior photos. You get some specifics about the property and its property history. And Realtor.com, it's very helpful for those who are looking to buy a home, but it's also a total waste of time for those who are merely looking at homes that are unattainable. And on that note, this past week I was on Realtor.com, and I was browsing homes in the Bel Air neighborhood of Los Angeles. That's where all of the entertainment elite live, and people who get paid lots of money for pretending to be someone else, they live in Bel Air. And I wasn't really looking to buy a home there. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, but I needed to satisfy my curiosity. I wanted to see if all the rumors that I had heard were true. I wanted to see if there really are people in the world who have that much money and who really live like that. And I guess there are. There was a house for sale, I think it's still available if you want it. It's at 924 Bel Air Road, and the asking price on that house is $150 million. I know we have a couple of real estate brokers in our congregation, and just wonder if they can imagine the commission they would get on that property if they were the listing agent. This house can only be described as a cruise ship on land. It has 38,000 square feet. It has 12 bedrooms. It has 21 bathrooms, a movie theater, a bowling alley, and Lord knows what else. If 150 million is too rich for your blood, you might be interested in knowing that there is a poorer section of Bel Air. Now, there are houses there where they have, the cheaper houses, they have an outdoor swimming pool because the people who own them can't afford an indoor one. It's more expensive. And the swimming pool kind of wraps around a patio, and a few of them even have putting greens. And just generally more modest amenities like that. You can pick up a house like that for just under $8 million. I don't know if any of us will be placing calls or emails to listing agents in California when we get home today, but it does raise a question that I would like to ask you rhetorically. What do you think of wealth in general? Among the working stiffs of the world, it's kind of a natural tendency to distrust at best and to hate at worst those who have a lot of money. There are many people who are delighted to hear stories that come out of the French Revolution, when the oppressed masses rose up against their rich overlords. Or cases such as Charles Dickens and his story of Ebenezer Scrooge. We were reminded of people like that, fictional, but still it tells a story. And then there are true stories like the CEO of the Nestle Corporation, and you can verify this on Snopes.com. He actually said that the very idea that drinking water would be a human right is an extreme idea. My wife has since banned all Nestle products from the Mercer household. And then, of course, there are cases of rich celebrities who game the system in order to get their kids into UCLA and other prestigious universities. You don't have to look very far, but you can find many, many, many instances of people of means. They have a lot of money, but they don't have much virtue. And then there's the other group We need to understand, too, that over the years, hospitals have been built by rich people. Orphanages have been funded by rich people. They also own the companies that employ hundreds or thousands of people in any given area, raising the standard of living for many people and contributing to the economy of a local area. Wealth in and of itself is neither good nor evil. It's simply a tool, much like a hammer or a screwdriver. And in the right hands, it can do good things. But in the wrong hands, it can perpetuate human misery. And throughout history, it's actually done both of those things. The Bible has much to say, actually, about wealth and the responsibility that goes with having it. If you look on your purple sheet in Amos, we're just going to do a real quick jog through this today. We see at first glance that the prophet Amos issues a warning to the rich of his day, mainly because they were living in the lap of luxury and they couldn't care less about anyone else, particularly with the fact that their nation was going down the tubes. And then so Amos was addressing them. Then you jump down to 1 Timothy. Look at verse 10, what the Apostle Paul says. And we've all heard this before. We've also heard misstatements of it. He says, "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil." Not money is the root of evil, but the love of it is a root of all kinds of evil. And in their eagerness to be rich, some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pains. Okay, this kind of builds a case for the ethos of Scripture regarding wealth and then our responsibility that goes with it. Today we're looking mostly in Luke 16 in the story of the rich man and Lazarus. It's a story in contrasts. It says in the text that the rich man was dressed in purple cloth and linen. Purple cloth in those days was a commodity that only the wealthy could afford. It was insanely expensive. Think Nordstrom. And I don't mean Nordstrom Rack either. Nordstrom, retail full price Nordstrom. That's what he had. He also shopped at Whole Foods. And there's probably going to be some Whole Foods shoppers that badger me after the service. But I mean, he had the high end of everything, and he lived in a house that was probably the equivalent then of what you would find in Bel Air today. Now we see Lazarus, a poor man laying outside the gate, just outside the driveway of the rich man. Lazarus had a bad skin condition, and it says that he was covered with sores. And the parable that Jesus told also states that dogs would come by and lick his sores. This actually, the idea of having one's sores licked by dogs adds a certain level of indignity to it, because in biblical antiquity, among the Jewish people, a dog was ritually and ceremonially unclean, much in the same way that pigs were. Dogs were pretty much on the same level as pigs. They were not the cute, adorable pets that many people think of them today. If anybody had dogs at all, it was just to keep the burglars away. That's the only reason they have them. And because dogs were not well loved, and actually in the Middle East today it's much the same way, most dogs were not especially well fed. Dogs went hungry a lot, and people they didn't love them, so they didn't take care of them. And so we have yet this rich man's guard dogs probably received scraps. Even they probably got scraps from the rich man's table. And it says that Lazarus longed for those scraps. Lazarus didn't even get them. The dogs got them. That gives you an idea how little regard that the rich man had in this parable for his fellow human beings. Even Lazarus was denied what the dogs were afforded. And they came by and they licked his sores. The rich man and Lazarus both die at the same time, and the rich man ends up in Hades, which is described in this parable as a place of torment and flames. I will just tell you parenthetically, Theologically, what Hades is an extremely unpleasant waiting room. Lazarus, on the other hand, was carried away by the angels to be with Abraham, which in ancient Judaism and Scripture is the opposite of Hades. This is actually like the first-class luxury lounge of the United Club at O'Hare. Okay, this is a really nice waiting room before the final judgment. And instantly regretful about the selfish way that he lived his life, the rich man asks Abraham to send Lazarus over to give him some water. And Abraham says, no, I can't do that. And then he wants someone to go back and to warn his 5 equally selfish brothers about this place so they can finally straighten up and fly right and they don't end here. But Abraham replies with an answer that you and I already know is true. He basically tells them, come on, you know it's not going to work. You know your own brother's attitudes, and you know it's not going to work. They've already received fair warning. They have Moses and the prophets, and if they don't listen to them, your brothers are a lost cause. No one can go back. In this parable, the problem with the rich man, it was not his wealth that was the problem, it was his attitude. Particularly the attitude of his heart. He loved his own comfort too much, and he loved his fellow human beings way too little. There's really nothing wrong. Wealth in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with having it. As a matter of fact, we need to have people in the world who do have a lot of money because they are in a position to write the checks that need to be written. We need them to build the hospitals and all this other stuff. The world needs people like that. But along with writing a big check, God has an expectation that the person would have a big heart. Along with the means, God has expectations. A holy God has expectations on the hearts of every person, not actually only on the rich, but you and me as well. That needs to coincide together. And the final and perhaps most important part of this parable, it ends with a truism that we often forget. Namely that we're mortal. That we are going to die someday. Someday you're going to die and someday I'm going to die as well. Anyone who's ever taken a 7th grade junior high life science class knows that and understands it. One question then after we're gone is, what did we do with the means that God provided for us to earn? What did we do with the money that we had? Did we do anything at all to alleviate human suffering? Did we do anything at all to labor for a more just society and world? A life well lived is a life that also includes things like empathy and compassion. There's a story about a wealthy man who many years ago, he was a free spirit, and in his advance directive, I guess, he already decided what kind of a burial that he wanted. And after his death, his burial took place according to his specific instructions. He was dressed in a sport coat and a hat and actually had a cigar stuck in his mouth. And he was sat upright behind the wheel of his expensive red convertible. This is so tacky, but it actually happened. And the speedometer on that car was set to 80 miles per hour. And he was lowered into the tomb that was large enough to accommodate him in his convertible. And at that funeral, as he was like Weekend at Bernie's, sitting there behind the wheel of his car, he's in state, and he's being lowered into the ground, a tearful mourner turned to somebody and said, "Oh man, that's living." That's living? as he's being lowered into the ground? There's no logic to that whatsoever. There's also no life. God isn't particularly concerned with how much we have. It's what we do with it that God is interested in. Amen.